I received the call that made all the difference 2 days ago. My phone rang as I was at my desk going over quarterly reports. Unknown figure. I nearly didn't respond. The voice seemed official and said, "Hello, is this Tessa Morgan?" I said, "Yes," speaking while continuing to type with my free hand. "This is Central Police Department Officer Rodriguez. I regret to notify you about the terrible vehicle accident in which your parents, Robert and Linda Morgan, were involved." I froze my fingers on the keyboard. "Are they okay?" Before he ever spoke a word, the silence on the queue told me everything. "Miss Morgan, I sincerely apologize. They did not make it through the hit." The remainder of the exchange is a haze. I recall bits and pieces, identification arrangements, inquiries about next of kin, and heartfelt condolences. After disconnecting up, I sat there with my coffee becoming cold next to me, looking blindly at my computer screen. My age is 34. I wasn't prepared to become an orphan. I contacted my sister Vanessa after the shock had passed sufficiently for me to be able to function. Living on the opposite side of the city with her spouse Derek and their 2 children, Lily and Noah, who are 2 and 4 years old, she is 5 years younger than me. "Hello." She seemed annoyed, as if I had disrupted something crucial. "It's me, Vanessa. Do you know anything about Mom and Dad?" My voice broke. She said, "Yeah, the police called me too," in a flat, aloof voice. "I'm going to begin organizing the funeral. Are you able to assist?" "There is a lot to do," she said, and I look, "Tessa," she said. "The children are with me. Derek is working late, and Noah has been ill all night. I can't simply let it go." "But Vanessa, our parents just died." "I know that," she said, raising her voice. "However, I have obligations here. You can manage it since you're single." That hurt because it seemed like being single somehow diminished the value of my time, as if I had nothing better to do than sit around and organize our parents' burial by myself. I responded, "Fine, too tired to fight. I'll take care of everything." "Tess, thank you. We'll be there. Just let me know when the funeral occurs." Before I could reply, she hung up. When we were youngsters, I was always the one in charge. "Tessa, you know better," and "Tessa, watch your sister," were constant refrains. Vanessa was the baby, the one who laughed and smiled and got away with anything. The trend persisted even after we grew up. I attended college, put forth a lot of effort, and developed a profession in finance. Before she met Derek, whose family was wealthy, Vanessa worked at several different professions. She then pretended to have won the jackpot and became a stay-at-home mother. I drove to my parents' house that evening. They'd bought it 6 years ago, a beautiful 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and a big backyard. I had my own room there, even though I rented an apartment closer to my office downtown. I stayed over often enough that it made sense to keep some clothes and personal items there. Mom had always hoped I'd move back in until I found someone, but I valued my independence. Opening the door with my key felt wrong somehow. The house was silent in a way it had never been when they were alive. Dad's reading glasses sat on the side table next to his favorite recliner. Mom's gardening magazine was open on the kitchen counter, a coffee ring marking the page she'd never finish. I made it as far as the living room before I broke down. I cried until my throat hurt and my eyes burned. Then I wiped my face, made a cup of tea, and started making calls. The next few days passed in a blur of funeral preparations. I chose the caskets, arranged the service, selected flowers, wrote the obituary, all while working remotely when I could, taking personal days when I couldn't. Not once did Vanessa offer to help. She texted once, asking if she needed to bring anything to the funeral, like it was a potluck dinner. The morning of the funeral arrived, gray and drizzly, fitting the occasion. I dressed in the bathroom of what had been my parents' bedroom, unable to look at their clothes still hanging in the closet, the indentations of their heads still visible on the pillows. The service was well attended. My parents had been active in the community. Dad coached Little League even years after we'd outgrown it, and Mom volunteered at the local library. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues filled the rows of seats at the funeral home. Vanessa arrived with Derek and the kids, all perfectly dressed in coordinating navy blue. Derek's parents, Gerald and Vivian, trailed behind them, looking as pinched and disapproving as always. I'd only met them a handful of times, and each encounter left me feeling judged and found wanting. "Tessa, darling," Vivian air-kissed near my cheek. "Such a tragedy. You've done well with the arrangements, considering." Before I could respond, the funeral director signaled it was time to begin. The service proceeded as planned until Vanessa surprised me by asking to speak. She approached the podium, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "Mom and Dad were everything to me," she began, her voice trembling artfully. "They supported every dream I ever had, cheered at every accomplishment, no matter how small. They were my biggest fans, my strongest supporters." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Was she describing our parents or characters from a Hallmark movie? "They were so proud of their grandchildren," she continued. "Mom was teaching Lily to bake, and Dad was already talking about coaching Noah in baseball someday." Her voice broke, and she paused dramatically. "I don't know how we'll go on without them, but I know they would want us to be strong, to be a family, to honor their memory by loving each other the way they loved us." As Vanessa returned to her seat to murmurs of sympathy, I found myself fighting a wave of anger. Where was this devotion when I needed help planning the funeral? Where was this family unity when I called her crying? I didn't say anything. This wasn't the time or place. The rest of the service passed in a haze, and soon we were at the cemetery, watching 2 caskets being lowered into the ground, making everything horribly final. I expected Vanessa and her family to join us at the reception afterward, but as soon as the last ceremonial handful of dirt was thrown, they made their excuses and left. Derek's parents followed suit, citing the children's nap schedule as their reason for departing. After the funeral, I stayed at the reception, making small talk with my parents' friends and relatives. Everyone kept telling me how sorry they were, how shocking it all was. I nodded and thanked them mechanically, feeling like I was watching myself from somewhere outside my body. Aunt Caroline, Dad's sister, hugged me tightly. "Your father would be proud of how you're handling everything, Tessa." "Are you staying at their house for now?" "I need to go through their things eventually, but I'm not ready yet." It was nearly evening by the time the last guests left. I cleaned up with the help of a few close family friends, then drove back to my parents' house. As I turned onto their street, something seemed off. There were cars in the driveway, cars I recognized. Vanessa's SUV, Derek's sleek sports car, and his parents' luxury sedan. My stomach tightened as I parked on the street. Walking toward the house, I noticed several large black garbage bags piled near the front door. Curious, I peered into one that had fallen open, my clothes, my books. Confused and increasingly angry, I marched up to the door and knocked loudly. After a moment, the door swung open. Vanessa stood there, her expression shifting from surprise to defiance. Behind her, Derek loomed with his arms crossed. In the background, I could see Gerald and Vivian sitting comfortably on the couch, my parents' couch, like they owned the place. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Why are my things outside in garbage bags?" Vanessa stepped forward, blocking the entrance. "We've decided to move in." "You've decided?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean, decided?" "This is our parents' house." "Exactly," Derek's father called from inside. "And everyone knows they loved Vanessa more." I stared at him, stunned by the blatant cruelty of his statement. Vivian nodded in agreement. "They didn't leave a will, did they?" "In cases like this, the property naturally goes to the closest family member. That would be Vanessa, with her children." "Your parents' grandchildren?" "That's not how inheritance works," I sputtered. "And this is still fresh. We haven't even begun to deal with their estate. We need a place to live," Vanessa said flatly. "The lease on our apartment is up, and this house has plenty of room for the kids." "It makes sense." "What about me?" I asked. "I've been staying here." "You have your own apartment," Derek said dismissively. "You don't need this house." I looked from face to face, seeing nothing but entitlement and disdain. Exhaustion washed over me. I just buried my parents. I couldn't fight this battle tonight. Fine, I said, my voice hollow. I'll take my things for now, but this isn't over. As I gathered the garbage bags and loaded them into my car, I overheard them through the open windows, already planning a housewarming party in 2 weeks, celebrating in my parents' house while they were barely cold in their graves. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of tears and rage. I carried the bags up to my one-bedroom place and started unpacking, discovering that they'd thrown out more than just my personal belongings. They'd bagged up family photo albums, probably dismissing them as clutter. I sat on my floor, flipping through the pages. A pattern emerged that I'd noticed, but never fully acknowledged before: photo after photo of Vanessa, birthdays, dance recitals, graduations, pages dedicated to her wedding and the births of her children. And me, a school portrait here, a graduation photo there, always on the periphery, never the center. Gerald's words echoed in my mind. Everyone knows they loved Vanessa more. He wasn't wrong. Our parents had always favored her, the baby, the pretty one, the one who needed more help, more attention, more everything. I'd accepted it long ago, throwing myself into school and then my career, building a life that didn't depend on their approval. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 6 years ago, when my parents found their dream house, they couldn't qualify for the mortgage. Their credit wasn't good enough, and they didn't have enough savings for the down payment. So I stepped in. I bought the house under my name, took out the mortgage, and let them live there. We agreed to keep it quiet. My parents were embarrassed about their financial situation and didn't want anyone to know. For the first time since receiving that terrible phone call, I smiled. I could picture the look on my sister's face when she learned the truth, but I didn't want to just tell her. I wanted to make a statement. The housewarming party in 2 weeks would be the perfect opportunity. The next morning, I called my friend Rachel, who happened to be a real estate attorney. I need your help, I said, explaining the situation. My sister has illegally occupied my house. There was a rustling of papers as Rachel took notes. And your sister moved in without permission, threw my stuff out in garbage bags? I confirmed. That's illegal entry and potential property damage, Rachel said. The law is clearly on your side. You could have them removed immediately if you wanted. I considered this. Actually, I have a better idea. Can you draw up an official eviction notice? I want to give them exactly 7 days to vacate the premises. After meeting with Rachel and getting the papers in order, I received an unexpected call from Aunt Caroline. Tessa, did you know your sister is throwing a housewarming party at your parents' house next weekend? She sounded outraged. It's disgraceful. The funeral was just days ago. I know, I said. Actually, I'd like you to go to that party. What? Why would I support such inappropriate behavior? I smiled into the phone. Because I'm planning a surprise. Trust me, you'll want to be there to see it. Aunt Caroline didn't press for details but agreed to attend. Only because you asked. Dear, and because I admit I'm curious about this surprise of yours. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of emotions, grief from my parents, anger at my sister, but also a sense of justice about to be served. In 1 week, everything would change. The week leading up to Vanessa's housewarming party crawled by. I spent the day of the party preparing, reviewing the eviction notice with Rachel one last time, and making copies of all the property documents. I dressed carefully in a sharp black suit, professional, authoritative, and just a touch funeral-like, a reminder of our recent loss that Vanessa seemed so eager to forget. At 7 p.m., I drove to my house. The street was lined with cars, and through the windows, I could see the party was already in full swing. Music drifted out into the evening air, along with the sound of laughter and conversation. It was surreal seeing such celebration in the home where I'd mourned just days before. I parked and took a deep breath, gathering my courage. The manila envelope containing my documents felt heavy in my hand as I approached the front door. It was propped open to welcome guests, so I walked right in. The living room was crowded with people I mostly didn't recognize, friends of Vanessa and Derek, I assumed, plus his family. A few of my parents' friends and relatives stood in awkward clusters, including Aunt Caroline, who caught my eye from across the room and gave me a subtle nod. Vanessa spotted me almost immediately. Her smile fell away, replaced by a look of pure annoyance. She whispered something to Derek, then marched over, glass of wine in hand. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low but not bothering to hide her hostility. "You weren't invited." "I don't need an invitation to my own house," I replied calmly. "This isn't your house anymore," she snapped, her voice rising. "It's mine now. You have your apartment, and I need this place for my family." People nearby began to notice our confrontation. Conversations quieted as guests turned to watch. "You're not welcome here," Vanessa continued, louder now, seemingly emboldened by having an audience. "This is my house, and I decide who to invite." Gerald and Vivian appeared at her side, forming a united front. Vivian placed a hand on Vanessa's shoulder in a show of support. "You need to leave," Gerald said firmly. "Don't make a scene at your sister's housewarming." Something inside me snapped. After days of grief, anger, and careful planning, I couldn't hold back anymore. I laughed, a genuine, spontaneous laugh that silenced the room. "My sister's housewarming," I repeated, opening the manila envelope. "That's interesting because according to these documents, this house belongs to me." I handed Vanessa the deed, with my name clearly listed as the property owner. Her face drained of color as she read it. This can't be right," she stammered. "Mom and Dad bought this house." "No, I bought this house," I corrected her. 6 years ago, I took out the mortgage. I've been making the payments. Mom and Dad lived here because I allowed them to." The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching, frozen in place, like a tableau. "That's not possible," Derek interjected, grabbing the document from Vanessa's hands. "Your parents own this house. Check the records if you don't believe me," I replied, my voice steady. "You should have done that before you moved in and threw my things out on the lawn." Vanessa's face cycled through emotions: disbelief, anger, fear. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Why would I?" I countered. "It was between me and our parents, and frankly, after the way you behaved, I'm glad I kept it to myself." I turned to address the room at large. "I'm sorry, everyone, but this party is over. I'm going to have to ask you all to leave my property." People began gathering their belongings, murmuring among themselves. Many shot sympathetic glances my way, while others looked embarrassed to have been caught in the middle of our family drama. Vanessa seemed to realize she was losing control of the situation. "You can't do this," she shouted. "We've already moved in. We gave up our apartment." "That's your problem," I said, pulling out the eviction notice. "Here's a formal eviction notice. You have 7 days to vacate the premises or I'll involve the police." 7 days? Derek exploded. "That's impossible. We have children." "You should have thought about your children before you illegally occupied my house and threw my belongings into garbage bags," I replied. By now, most of the guests had filed out. Only Aunt Caroline remained standing quietly near the door. Vanessa snatched the eviction notice from my hand and tore it in half. "This isn't over," she snarled. "You can't just throw us out. We're family." "Family?" I echoed. "Was I family when you refused to help with the funeral? Was I family when you moved in here without even asking me? Was I family when you and your in-laws insulted me and treated me like an intruder?" She had no answer for that. Tears welled in her eyes, whether from genuine emotion or manipulation. I couldn't tell anymore. 7 days, I repeated. "I'll be back with the police if you're still here." I turned and walked out, ignoring her calls after me. Aunt Caroline followed me to my car. "That was quite a surprise," she said, embracing me. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." "Thanks for being here," I replied, suddenly exhausted now that the confrontation was over. As I drove away, I saw Vanessa standing in the doorway. My doorway. Watching me go, her expression unreadable, in the gathering darkness, For the next week, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from Vanessa. At first, they were angry and threatening. Then they changed to pleading. We have nowhere to go. The kids love this house already. We'll pay rent, whatever you think is fair. Please, Tessa, don't do this to us. I read each one but didn't respond. This wasn't a negotiation. Years of being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who could be counted on to give in, those days were over. Rachel advised me to document everything. If they refuse to leave, we'll need evidence for the court, she explained. On the 7th day, I drove to the house with Rachel beside me for legal support. I wasn't sure what to expect. Part of me thought Vanessa might barricade the doors and force a confrontation. Another part wondered if they'd already left, slipping away in the night rather than face me again. What I found was somewhere in between. When we arrived, the front yard was littered with boxes and furniture. A moving truck sat in the driveway, its back doors open as Derek and his father loaded items inside. Vanessa sat on the front steps, watching the children play in the yard, as if this were just another moving day, not an eviction. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a far cry from her usual polished appearance. She saw me approaching and stood up, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "You actually came," she said, her voice flat. "I said I would," I replied simply. We stood in awkward silence, watching as Derek struggled with a heavy dresser. "You know, you didn't have to do it this way," Vanessa finally said. "You could have told me privately, not humiliated me in front of everyone. Like how you didn't humiliate me by throwing my things in garbage bags," I countered. "Or how you didn't ambush me when I was grieving?" She had the grace to look away. "I didn't think of it that way. That's your problem, Vanessa. You never think about how your actions affect others." Vivian emerged from the house, carrying a box of kitchen items. She saw me and immediately bristled. "I hope you're satisfied," she said coldly. "Forcing a family with small children out of their home. Your own sister, Mom." "Don't," Vanessa warned, but Vivian was on a roll. "We've had to scramble to find a rental. Do you know how hard that is on such short notice with 2 children? Your parents would be ashamed." "My parents knew exactly who owned this house," I replied evenly. "And they'd be ashamed that Vanessa didn't even help with their funeral, but was quick to claim their home." Vivian opened her mouth to argue, but Derek called her over to help with something in the truck. She gave me one last glare before walking away. "We've almost got everything," Vanessa said quietly once we were alone. "We'll be out in an hour." I nodded. "I'll wait." "You're really going to just stand there and watch us leave?" she asked incredulously. "I'm making sure you don't take anything that isn't yours," I replied. "After all, you've already shown me how much respect you have for other people's property." We fell into silence again, watching as the last pieces of furniture were loaded into the truck. Derek and his parents avoided looking at me as they worked. I could hear them muttering to each other, no doubt about my cruelty and heartlessness. Finally, everything was packed. The children were buckled into car seats. The moving truck was closed up, and only Vanessa remained on the front porch, looking around one last time. "It's unbelievable that you're doing this," she whispered quietly. "We are sisters." "Were we?" I inquired. "I never had that feeling. Not while we were children, and most definitely not after the deaths of our parents." She started crying. "This feels so final, even though I know I haven't been perfect." I firmly stated, "It is final. A relationship with someone who only contacts me when they need something from me is not something I want." She gently nodded, acknowledging that what I had said was true. "From here, where will you go?" "I'm going to move in," I answered. "After all, it's my house." "And us too?" she inquired. "Will we ever communicate again?" I thought about the query. A part of me wanted to end our connection forever, but another part of me thought back to when we were kids, simply sisters sharing secrets and hopes before the favoritism became apparent. I honestly said, "I don't know. Whether or not you can learn to see me as more than just a resource and as a person will determine that. She just picked up her final suitcase and headed to their car without replying. The moving truck trailed behind them as they drove off. I inhaled deeply and turned to face my house as they rounded the corner and were out of sight. 3 months have passed since then. Now that I've moved in, I can finally call the place my own. After moving the furniture and repainting the walls, I eventually sorted through my parents' belongings and gave away what I couldn't retain. I still really miss them. I occasionally wake up believing I smell my mom's perfume in the hallway or hear my dad laughing from the kitchen. As they say, grief comes in waves. Since that day, Vanessa and I haven't spoken. According to Aunt Caroline, they have located a rental home on the other side of town. After hearing the whole tale, our other family have mostly sided with me, despite Vanessa apparently complaining to anybody who would listen about my selfishness and avarice. I occasionally question whether our relationship will ever be repaired. A part of me is glad to be free of the incessant taking without giving and the emotional manipulation, but another part of me misses having a sister, especially one as complex as Vanessa. Right now, I'm concentrating on getting better, reclaiming this house, and paying tribute to my parents' legacy while creating my own life. And I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in a long time.